You know, on the carpet, we started with the title, and I want to go back to that because I think it's such a beautiful. I think, to me, the imagery is of like a big middle finger without hiding it as well.
Yes.
Tell me about creating this title, but also the concept and coming up with this group of ladies. What this experience has been like. It seems like such a fresh thing.
Yeah, I mean, it came about as like a tweet. I was literally, it really did. I was about to go, I had gotten an audition for a girl named Fatima who takes off her hijab in the name of Western feminism. And it was literally my third audition in a row. It's not even a joke, for a girl named Fatima who does the same thing. And it was written by, guess what? Not a Muslim woman. So I was really frustrated. I remember writing to my manager. I was like, oh, I'm not going to go in for this. And I turned it down. And then, I did what every comedy writer does. I turned to Twitter to find my tribe. So I sent out this tweet and I was like, male creators who are not Muslim women who are writing these characters named Fatima, you know who you are, stop writing them. We have other names too. And I think that's all the tweet said. And that got like retweeted so many, multiple dozens of times. And, all these female comics started responding to it. And so I met a group of them off Twitter. And then it turned out Athir Yaqub and I lived a few blocks from each other in New York on the Upper East Side. So we got together in her apartment and we were like, let's just talk. Let's just trauma bond together about, our lives working in the industry and what that feels like as American Muslim women. And we were just talking one day and I was like, guys, what if we just got a diverse group of women like here and our other friends who are all creative people, get them in a room and just ask them simple questions like, hey, what's your favorite dessert? Like, do you like chocolate? Because I feel like the information about Muslim women that exists in the world is so limited and is so told through this one lens, which is or two lenses, abused, battered, voiceless, right? Or like hypersexualized. Those are the only two kind of Muslim women we ever see in the media. So I was like, but that's nothing like anyone's reality that I know or my own reality or anyone in this room where we were having this conversation. So Athir and I decided to kind of band together and create this web series, and we just did it very quickly. We met over like a 1 or 2 hours. We came up with the questions we wanted to ask, and it was a series of like 12 questions. And then we shot it in like a 6-hour span. I didn't pay for it. I begged, borrowed, and stole from a friend who has a huge studio in New York City who I've done some work for. And I was like, hey, can we just use your studio for free? We'll credit you as a producer on this. And she was like, sure, come in anytime. So we did the 6-hour thing. We interviewed 8 women. We asked them these 12 questions. And then a post-production house came on board. And we ended up with 12 episodes of the first iteration of Muslim Girls DTF, which is just a web series that we just released it on YouTube without any plan. We were like, we're just gonna put it out on YouTube. And we got a lot of press for it. And then we were just like, Athir and I were like, oh, I think we should do something more with this. Like, what's funny? Maybe we can do a sketch show and it would still be easy than like creating a whole big narrative arc and all that stuff, right? Because for that, you have to like get together, sit down. Sketches is like, we can just write on our own, one off. And so we created a sketch show, Athir and I, just the two of us. And we got into something called the Yes and Laughter Lab in New York. And it's like a pitch incubator. So we got in, we were one of like the 20 people selected out of however many hundreds had applied, and then we won that pitch incubator. So, and then we got funding right around the time we got in. We also got funding from the Roddenberry Impact Award to create a diverse American Muslim female writers room. So we just turned to all of our comic friends and we're like, hey, do you want to be in this writers room? And everyone, for like very little money, because it was not real money. It was little money. So everybody agreed and they were like, yes, let's do it. So we then ended up creating the writers room, which was actually during COVID. It was in 2020 in the fall. And then we just kept pushing off, like, because the vaccine wasn't a real thing, or it existed but people hadn't had it and people weren't quite traveling yet. It was still 2020, so we kept pushing off filming it. And then finally in the fall of 2021 we filmed the sketches, and we had to be really economical because we just picked the easy to film sketches. We have like a dozen other sketches that we wrote, but we had to pick the ones with enough characters that we had from the pool of 5 of us, and also with one location, because we couldn't be switching around. We only had 2 days to shoot. That's just how the budget worked out. So yeah, we were just lucky. Everybody wanted to do it for very little money. We put together an amazing crew, which ended up being like all really like 100% people of color, and a lot of Muslim women in front of and behind the camera. I ended up directing for the first time ever, only because like we had nobody, we couldn't pay a director. I was talking to a few friends, we'd have to fly them in. So I was like, oh, maybe we can like have our friends come in and like somebody can like direct, they could like direct one sketch each. We can have a couple of different, Muslim American female directors on this. It just didn't happen because we didn't have the funds. So then I was like, I'll direct. And then I did, yeah.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
I've got to ask, looking at the 5 women, including yourself, the diversity in this group alone showcases just the variety of different types of women out there. And I know that's not a Muslim thing, but that is something that isn't showcased enough. The diversity in women, the ages difference, the race difference. There is so much more to all this that isn't showcased in any form in any types of films before this. I love just seeing the different people.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, again, the narrative is always the same. I feel like people want to tell a Muslim story and they're like, and then she'll be in a hijab. And that's great because, half of my family wears a hijab. A lot of my friends who are creative people are Muslim women, also wear it. And it's part of what their activism, their feminism, all of that stuff, and it's all great. But there are a lot of us who don't. And what does that look like? And there's, it's like I've read a statistic somewhere, like 1/3 of the black slaves who were brought to America were Muslim, and they had to like change their religion and hide it or whatever because they weren't allowed to, practice freely, and all of that stuff they changed. But I'm like, so black people were like the original Muslims in this country, yet we don't associate black people with Islam, and in America, right? And there's also like within our own communities, there's so much almost like racism against the black Muslims. I've seen it myself growing up in mosques and going to, cultural, religious places. I was like, well, why don't we show that? Why don't we show that experience? What does that voice look like? So we were so lucky to get Zainab Johnson. She's this freaking superstar, and she like kills it in every scene she's in. So it was really great working with her.
Since it was in sketch format, how much improv went on? How much was, a scene and then, I love that line, let's switch it. How much of y'all's comedic style is bled into these roles?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So that's why all 5 of us are credited as writers on this, because even though we wrote it, and then of course we had the writers room, we had funding to like create the writers room for a week, so we all wrote it together. Then it's like we didn't have any more funds, so we couldn't ask the ladies to be involved, right? Because I felt bad like asking them to do the work and not paying them. So of course Athir and I ended up like taking these sketches and like punching them up more or like kind of refining them. But then to be honest, when we got in the room, I would say people still did a lot of improv. So it was even like maybe 20 to 30% of what you're seeing in some of the really funny things, for instance, like Nagine's lines about you're like a Middle Eastern Mary Poppins. She just made that up on the fly. So some of that stuff, like the ending to our sketch about the last sketch in the show with me and Zainab, where we're doing the abortion. Yes, that ending was not written that way. It was written in a very different. We were like, and then lights dim, and then I've had the time of my life. The song comes on and they dance out together happily into the night. That was the ending to that sketch. And that sketch then in our original pilot, because we have more sketches, bled into a new sketch. So that was the ending to that. But when we got into that courtroom where we were, it was like we had 1 hour to shoot that sketch. So we ran out of time because it was our second day of shooting and we were gonna hit like our 10-hour mark and go over. So we just had 1 hour maybe it was an hour and a half. And we just we were like, I remember the DP was like, oh, the lights in this room don't work. We only have this limited lighting. So you two can't move from this spot. You have to stand here. So I had to reimagine all the blocking, like on the fly in that hour and a half. And then we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do? We can't dance out of here. They can't light us. And also dancing out of that particular courtroom, it just opened up into this really dead space, which wasn't very cinematic to show in any way. And we didn't have the means to dress it up in any way either. And it's like these 80s style old cubicles. So I was like, this is gonna look really weird if we dance out of here and we show it. So yeah, so we came up with this whole other different ending on the fly to that. And even in that, you know, honestly, like the things in that sketch that make me personally laugh are improvised also, which is really interesting how that. And there's a few lines in that particular sketch that were improvised, and the rest of them were all written. But it also took us such a long time to like find the rhythm. That sketch was written in such a different way, and it was very wordy. And then we were like, when we finally got closer to shooting, we were like, okay, this needs to be very fast. This needs to be like ankle, no wrists, no this, no that, you know, long dress, short dress. It needs to be that speed, you know? So kind of like first finding it on paper and then also finding it in the room very quickly in that hour we had. It was a challenge, but also very exciting because I love how that turned out.
Some of the best lines and moments are when y'all are portraying a family member, a parent. How much fun is it to poke fun at yourself in this sort of scenario, to showcase the diversity of the different types of families, but Jewish mom came to mind. You know what I mean? Like there's a connection.
That. Yeah, I think it's the immigrant experience. You know, we're all connected in America as a country of immigrants, really. It is what it is, right? So it's that Jewish mom, and people really relate, and the Muslim mom, it's the same. And I think that's the message. Like at the end of the day, that I think you can use comedy to show people that, you know, this might look different, but like this is all the same, and for all of us, and we all want the same things out of life. You know, the mom just wants the daughter to like live with her forever and ever and smother her with love, you know?
I love the notion of therapy to Muslim women. Please share with us, because I think that is one of the funniest moments. Was there's no such thing as it, because it's not real.
Muslim people don't believe in therapy. It's like so true. Brown people don't believe in therapy. I think we start off that talking heads with that, but then by the end of it, it's just like the mom completely takes over, and then the therapist is needing her own therapy by then. By the time, and she's eating the food by the time the Muslim mom is done with her. No, and that comes from like a real place for all of us. Like we grew up in households, all of us were talking, where our parents didn't believe in therapy, and I think a lot of times, like, you know, there's certain scenarios, especially when there's so much trauma. Our parents have come from places with a lot of war and a lot of other things, and from some of these parts of the world. You know, of course, Zainab is from here. Her parents did not come. Did she? Maybe her parents or somebody in her family is an immigrant from somewhere. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I think it's a slightly different experience than our parents being immigrants from the Middle East and South Asia, you know, versus, so yeah, but still, like this therapy, they don't believe in it. They come from this very traumatic experiences, and they kind of could use therapy, you know. So yeah, so we kind of wanted to kind of bring all of that to the forefront, about how we navigate that as, you know, as Americans. And what does that feel like when your parents come from a different place and, you know, your values kind of don't align?
So since there was the series before on the web, is there hopes of turning this into an episodic thing, another type of version of it? Will we see another incarnations? Will we see, like you had, more comedians, more different women coming in? I'm curious, as far as expansion, I feel like there's so many avenues you could go with. What's the goal?
I mean, I think we want to be like the Wayan brothers before the Muslim women, you know, and and people of color, really. I would love to expand this and like have this be a revolving door for a diverse group of actors, writers, performers, you know, sound people, more behind the scenes people, because I think there's so much talent out there that, you know, we're not really tapping into right now because those opportunities are limited.
Can you expand on that? Tell us, how difficult is it? I mean, speak your mind, because it's something that I think we hear about because we talk to filmmakers, we talk to people in the industry, but people outside of it, they don't see the films, they don't know the films are even out there. And of course, the ones they do, like you said, are usually very stereotypical. How difficult is it to be in this space, and how do you stay positive during that?
Yeah, look, I think that historically, there's been a certain aspect in Hollywood that's been pushed around Muslims, right? They want to show like this woman got stoned by her father. Like what happened? It's like literally that narrative, right? So it's hard when you're trying to do something outside of what the majority is looking from your community. So, or people in places of power, I should say, right? Though they're the majority in our industry, you know, which is fascinating because University of Annenberg, UC, did this really interesting study about Muslims in Hollywood that came out last year, I think it was, where they said that about 1% of roles in Hollywood with speaking parts go to Muslims. Usually a man, it's usually a terrorist. So Muslim female representation is even less than 1%. Yet, Hollywood is one of the 3 top industries in the world, and 27% of the world's population is Muslim. So it's like when we don't see ourselves being depicted in the way that, you know, we know ourselves to be, it really messes with your mind, right? And your self-worth and your identity and the way you see yourself. So I think it's really important. And I do think that the industry is opening up. And I am truly grateful to the Bentonville Film Festival because, you know, as a person who's been in the industry for a decade now, I've often come across this. They'll be like, oh, we did one Muslim thing, and they'll do like one black thing and one Latin thing, and then that's their diversity. I felt last year when I was here with my feature film, I really felt like it was the first time I was in a space where I was like, we were not the only Muslim film. There were 5 other Muslim filmmakers across like episodic shorts and, you know, so we weren't the token. And I think Bentonville really does a great job of that. I'm so grateful, and I think slowly things are changing, but, you know, not fast enough.
What's it like having back-to-back work that is really resonating? I mean, Americanish was, I don't know anyone who hasn't seen it doesn't love it. It's kind of ridiculous how good it is. It's really annoying how good it is because it's really touches on so many heartfelt touches that are real. And I watched this, I couldn't stop laughing. I got so many of the jokes. There was so much perfectness in it. It's kind of spooky. Do you have the magic sauce? What's going on?
I don't know. It took us 8 years to get the perfectness, and I still feel like it's not perfect. So that's just me as a filmmaker. But, you know, we shot it for and then we were editing it for 3 years because we had to do reshoots and pickups, and we were trying to perfect it constantly. I don't know if I have the magic sauce, but I know that I'm in the business of telling very specific universal stories for a global audience. That's like the only thing I know what to do, and I've been doing this for a decade now, from my one-woman show, which is what the characters in Americanish were inspired by, to the feature film, to now this. And it's lovely to see how it was like, you know, last night we had our screening at Bentonville, and it was just a full sold-out house, and there was not a single person in the house that was Muslim, and they were laughing. So I was like, yes, mission accomplished.
How much have you changed as a writer because of these experiences, and what is coming out from you in the future?
Yeah, I think I've grown so much. Like, first of all, just working on Americanish for 8 years, all those years, I mean, I literally wrote and rewrote that script from scratch, like at least, I don't even know, 8 times. So just like I've learned so much. And then since we were editing it for 3 years, I felt like I needed to learn. So I actually went back to school to get my MFA in writing for film and TV. So I graduated last year with that. And since then, I've just been writing more. And I definitely want to highlight, you know, stories that are close to my heart. Like, I grew up in the South, Muslim, going to my best friend's youth group at her church. And it was just not a regular, it was like a church of God where they spoke in tongues. So it was a very unique experience, and I feel like we never see like Muslims in that world. And it was also the South, and it's like pageant culture and football culture, and that is like their religion, you know, in this little small dinky town population of 15,000. That's where I grew up. So I kind of just want to kind of go back to those roots too, and like honor that as it's such a big part of me, who I am and how I've grown up. So I kind of want to tell those stories. So I'm like working my way back into now being able to tell kind of those stories.
Very nice. Lastly, I'd like to just ask for you, sharing this with loved ones and showing this work to parents even, how much fun is it to see their reactions, knowing that you are prodding a little bit, poking a little bit, but yet doing it from a very righteous let's get the voices out there. Let's show a little bit more of the truth. What have some of those responses been like for you, and in your own community? How have you felt the response has been?
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. My parents just saw the film for the first time when it was in Dallas, because they're there, and they moved from Mississippi to Dallas years ago when they retired. And my dad, I think, gave me like the highest compliment ever. He's amazing anyway. He's a writer also. He's a poet. And he was like, he watched the film, he was like, that was a complete film. And I think that's like the biggest, highest compliment from my dad I've ever gotten. So yeah, no, it was really nice. And I think another thing I really love is how this film has created an intergenerational dialogue, so we've had a lot of like older people, parents tell us like, hey, my kids have really taught me a lot, and I didn't see things a certain way. But also this film is opening up this, they see themselves in sort of the older character in the film. And then, so it's interesting. And Muslim Girls DTF, this is just our second festival, so it hasn't gotten out there in a wider way. And we premiered at Series Fest, which is in Denver, Colorado. So the community wasn't really there. And this is Bentonville, where, it's not like the Muslim community is not here either. So I'm kind of excited to see how this plays with the Muslim audience. I don't know yet. So we're just at the beginning of our festival run.
They didn't have any reservation about anal or anything like that?
They didn't. No, I don't know. Did they get it? Did they get that part? I don't know if they got that part.
Honestly, it's a pleasure seeing the trajectory of what we've seen, because we've now been able to follow you and this work. So thank you for letting us back into your journey, and we're always here for you. It's always a pleasure.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for having me.